In this lesson, we'll look at a few ways to create UV maps for some of our objects so that we can then apply images to the materials. So up to now, we've been just using the simple materials that we've been able to add here, car paint shader and different colored materials with different sorts of attributes. But let's say that we want to actually add an image to one of these pieces. Well, to do that, we actually have to lay out the UVs. And the UVs are going to tell, in this case, Maya, how to apply a two-dimensional image to a 3D object. So what we want to do is first take our piece, and let's go ahead and take this front part of the grill that we need to create a UV layout for. I'm going to go ahead and dial the divisions down to 0. And there are many ways that we can create UVs. To see our UVs, we're going to be going into our UV texture editor. And right now, this is what this particular piece of geometry looks like. And it's really quite a mess, and it's not really going to be too useful to us. So what we want to do is lay out those UVs in this box right here, in 0 to 1 space, so that we can then apply a texture map to this. The first way that we're going to look at is just to do a simple planar map, and that's going to project the UVs, in this case from the Z direction. So we'll go to UVs, and let's go to planar map. And we can choose which axis we want to use and project. Okay, and you can see that you've got a manipulator there that you can change, and that changes the UV layout as well. You can see how this looks much closer to the piece that we have here. And the goal is to get that kind of looking as close as you can and have it unfolded so that we can then apply a texture map to that. Okay, if we unfold this little button right here, it's going to try to match the shape and orientation of these faces with the ones in the viewport, which is what we want. So I'll go ahead and scale this down, and we want to maintain the size in here inside of this particular quadrant, as this is where our texture map is going to be sort of applied. Okay. So if we want to go ahead and paint on this, we can take a UV snapshot. Okay. For this particular one, I don't think we need to do that. We just need to have the UVs laid out, and we'll create a pattern. But as we move up here to the headlight, you can see that we've got some UVs in here, but there's a lot of overlapping UVs, and it's not actually very useful. Well, another way that we can lay out the UVs is to do an auto map. So go ahead and do an automatic mapping here. And you can see this gives us a bunch of different pieces. But if we take a look, you can identify some of the main pieces. For instance, this is that top piece. You can see as I select the UVs, they're selected over here. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate that so it makes a little bit more sense. And I'll go ahead and rotate this. And these are basically all the pieces along the sides. If I go ahead and right-click on edges and select those edges, I highlight those, you can see that there are a couple of other edges highlighted, and those are telling me that that's where those are connected. Okay, so I can move and sew those together if I want to. And that just puts those pieces back together again. If I select these edges down here, you can see that that will move them kind of back where they go. Now in this case, I don't really care too much about the pieces on the side, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of put them together, rotate them so they fit. A lot of the time when you're doing UV work, it's going to be just trying to fit everything in the tight space without anything overlapping. Because the idea is that you'll have an image here, and you'll be able to tell it, you know, where basically what part of the image goes on which face. Now, since we don't care too much about the edges, I'm going to go ahead and scale those down so I get a little bit more texture space with this guy, and I'm going to try to get it sort of in the middle. And to do that, I'm going to take some of these and maybe move them over to this side. Okay. And in this case, I think I am going to output a UV snapshot. And that's going to give us just an image that has this UV layout on it so that we can use that as a template when we go to paint our texture map. So I'll go ahead and save it as headlight and 1024. And let's go ahead and save it there. .uv, and I'll save it as can save it as a JPEG. That's fine. Go ahead and save that out, and then that image will be there waiting for you. Okay, we can also do the UVs for, say, the reflector. Okay, so let me go back to our UV texture editor. And these, this guy came in with some UVs by default, but let's go ahead and do an auto map. And now you can see, because of the angle, that those UVs, kind of interesting looking. Then you can see the planes that are being used to project the UV map. You can see those right in here. Okay, to move and sew these guys, I'm going to just select all of those edges around here. You can see the edges that match up there, and I can just move those together. Okay, these guys, if I go ahead and I can hold down Control and right click, and I say to shell, and I can select that entire shell. I can select all of these. If I sew those together and then unfold, I get that sort of a look, and then I can scale that up as large as I can here, and that'll enable us to put any sort of pattern that we want to on there. Okay, and we can also do the UVs on this little light here. Okay, and just attach those UVs to the back there. Okay, if we want to cut some UVs apart, say I want to cut it right here, so I'll select that edge. You can see, if you look up here, there's some scissors. Just cut that, select these edges, and go ahead and move and sew. And then select this entire thing, hold down Control to deselect the corresponding edges, and then just sew that. Now we've got two pieces. Okay, I don't really care much for this piece, but I want to kind of bring that one up into the middle there. Alright, so once we have this, so let's say we have this UV'd and we can see this here. We know that the one on the back is the same piece of geometry. Go ahead and hide this. Same piece of geometry, but it still has the old UVs. Well, instead of UVing that again, we can actually transfer the map. So we'll go ahead and select the good UVs and then shift select the bad one. You can see both of them there. And then we're going to go to transfer attributes. I've got vertex position, vertex normal off, UV sets all, color sets off. I'm going to use component sample space and go ahead and transfer those UVs. And now you can see that the one in the back has now the new UVs. And I can do the same thing over here, and I'll just hit G to repeat that. And now I've transferred those UVs. Alright. So that's just a couple of ways to lay out the UVs. Basically, any of the pieces that you want to UV, let's go ahead and UV the tires. I know we're going to put some tread on here. So we'll go to the texture editor. Now if I just unfold this, you can see that that's already given us basically the tire. So a lot of times your geometry will come with UVs when you create it. But if we want to straighten this up, say we want to straighten this line, you can hit this little guy. That'll pop everything down to the lowest point that's been selected. Here I can do some scaling, or I can rotate to kind of straighten this out. Okay, and you can see that that is the interior there, and then this is going to be the exterior, the part in here. So go ahead and rotate that, and we'll sort of try to straighten that out. You can see that if you want a straight line over here, you can grab all of these and click on one of these guys, and I'll pop it to that side. So it depends on how straight that you want it. I'll go ahead and scale this up as big as I can. Okay, and then we will go ahead and save out a UV snapshot, and we'll call this tire UV. Tire UV. Okay. And so that will allow us to put the tread on there. Alright, so just UV, anything that you want to apply a map to. We're going to apply a map to the headlights, the reflector, the grille, which we already did, the UVs for, and also the tires we'll put a bump on. So let's go ahead and in the next lesson go into Photoshop and start creating the grille texture. We'll make a pattern and use that to create a nice bump to apply to our grille. So we'll go ahead and do that in the next lesson.